Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. It's a Monday, October the 5th, year of our Lord 2020. The President of the United States just tweeting. I want to get this up on screen as breaking news here. He says, I will be leaving the Great Walter Reed Medical Center today at 6:30 p.m. That's Eastern Time, I imagine. He goes on, feeling really good. Don't be afraid of COVID. Don't let it dominate your life. We have developed under the Trump administration some really great drugs and knowledge. I feel better than I did 20 years ago, and the market's responding positively to that as that tweet was sent just moments ago. We'll be keeping you abreast of all of the developments here live for the next hour on the National Pulse. We have some great guests for you lined up today as well. Patrick Basham from the Democracy Institute, one of the only pollsters in the world, one of the only organizations in the world to get Brexit correct, to get the 2016 vote correct. Will they be getting 2020 correct, or will it be one of these polls from NBC and the Wall Street Journal and so on and so forth? We're going to be getting into that. I do regard myself as one of the foremost pioneers of calling out the fake polling industry, and I think it's about time we gave ourselves some answers to the solution of what happens when the pollsters keep getting things incorrect, and why are they doing it in the first place? I have a feeling that it's intentional. I have a feeling that it is intended to be a mechanism to suppress certain voters and to impress other voters. And we'll talk about that with Patrick Basham from the Democracy Institute. We'll also have Phil Klein on the show today from the Amistad Project. The Amistad Project taking great leaps today, announcing 4 federal lawsuits around the country as it relates to this Center for Technology and Civic Life, an organization led in part by Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. It talks about how much money is being plowed into certain areas all around the country. And if you're in one of these areas, rather, I want you to get in touch with us. I want you to contact us either through social media or our Facebook page. There's a messages section. You can hit us up on the live chat on YouTube as well. Some of these places I'll read off to you now, but Phil Klein will elaborate on that. Dallas County, Texas; Philadelphia; Fulton, GA; Cobb, GA; Wayne County, Michigan; Delaware; Pennsylvania; Bexar, Texas; Cameroon, Texas; Hines, Mississippi; Center, Pennsylvania; Richmond, South Carolina; Charleston, South Carolina; Lucas, Ohio; Hayes, Texas; Onondaga, New York; Scott, Iowa; and Black Hawk in Iowa. Again, if any of you are in or around or near any of those areas, I want you to get in touch with us, because we're going to have more details to come of this from the Amistad Project as the show goes on today. Remember, we are waiting for the president's doctors, I believe, to make an announcement very shortly. But the latest breaking news, as we have it here, is that President Trump is announcing that he will leave the Walter Reed Medical Center today at 6:30 p.m. Now, I know that's going to upset a lot of reporters. One of those reporters you probably heard got caught on a hot mic this weekend after the president went into hospital, the next day after the president went into hospital, and the reporter said at the time, oh, that wasn't as fun as yesterday, talking about the update to the president's health condition rather than the president actually going into hospital. This is the media that we're dealing with at the moment, and this is the media that we'll deal with up until January the 20th, when hopefully you have a president inaugurated. But who knows? At this point in time, we've been going through a lot of the steal and what's been happening with the steal over the course of this show, The War Room, The National Pulse, Revolver.news and beyond over the last couple of weeks. It's getting hotter and hotter out there. That's why we need to drill into the numbers today. It's why it's a Monday morning, or it's a Monday afternoon rather, but it was a Monday morning earlier, and we got into the nitty gritty on the War Room show this morning about the numbers. About the least favorite thing I want to do on a Monday morning is dive in to mathematics and statistics and poll numbers, but it's got to be done. There's no time for a break here. There's no time for resting. We can do that after January the 20th. For now, it is imperative with Patrick Basham on with us in just a moment, with Phil Klein today. And over the course of the show, over this week, we'll be getting down into the details and how you at home watching, wherever you're watching from, can make a difference in this election, can make a difference to the steal that's clearly taking place before our very eyes. So we're waiting for the developments from Walter Reed Medical Center, but as I say, the news is that the president will be leaving there at 6:30 p.m. The media, meanwhile, is in quite the tizzy. I'm sure they would have liked him to stay in there for much longer. So they're firing off everything possible. A story just broke on Vanity Fair. It's already trending on social media. The headline is, Don Jr. thinks Trump is acting crazy. And of course, just a number of anonymous sources quoted in that attempt, it looks like to me, to drive a wedge inside the Trump family. Right now, we're going to be diving into more of how Gabe Sherman and the Vanity Fair have sourced their story on this. One of the tells, by the way, of a story that's not well sourced or fully fleshed out is that you have a big, massive headline, a really jarring headline, and then only 4 paragraphs, so not much detailed information. And that's one of these stories that's breaking on Vanity Fair right now, much like those stories that you saw in The Atlantic over the last couple of weeks. So stay tuned. Natalie Winters will join us in the last segment of the show today to talk about some scoops, detailed scoops, that don't rely on anonymous sourcing, that we've got up and waiting to go up on thenationalpulse.com. So why don't you head on over there while we take a short break, thenationalpulse.com. If you like our work, it's thenationalpulse.com/support. I'm Raheem Kassam, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. We're so grateful to have you with us, and I'm really grateful for those of you who take the next active step in sharing this show, making sure your friends or family members see it, etc. We are pretty new, I guess. We've been doing this, for nearly 2 months now, but I'm stunned by the level of interaction that we get here on this show and beyond and afterwards, and all the clips and all of that. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody out there who's helping us reach more people all day long, every day. And one of the big stories we had this weekend that I know a lot of the audience shared was actually a cribbing of the work of our next guest. But I'm sure Patrick Basham doesn't mind. He's the director of the Democracy Institute, a sort of free market think tank between Washington, D.C. and London. And the story, as we had it up on the National Pulse, was headlined, "Poll that doesn't weight in favor of Democrats shows Trump leading nationally." Now, this came off the back of a Democracy Institute and Sunday Express poll, the Sunday Express being one of the leading newspapers in the United Kingdom. But what's interesting to me is that the Democracy Institute was the pollster that got Brexit correct. It got 2016 correct. And so I'm so grateful to have Patrick Basham on the line with us now. Patrick, thanks for joining us here on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure to be with you, Raheem.
Okay, so first questions first. Is there voodoo behind what you do? How come you guys are getting it correct and all of these multi-million-dollar polling organizations can't seem to get it on the money as you do?
Well, I'll say something modest and then I'll say something immodest. The modest statement is that the truth behind the polling curtain is that these days, at least, it's as much, maybe more art than it is science. So anyone who tells you as a pollster that it's all about the methodology and all about the science is misleading you. The immodest thing, if I can talk about why, how we got Brexit in 2016 here in the US correct, and why we think we're closer to the money than others in 2020 here in the US, it's about a couple of things. One is that we actually take a very realistic look at who's going to turn out. And that's why we have just a slight edge to the Democrats, or at least those who are registered as Democrats, many of whom I think will actually vote for Trump. So we have what they call a +2 Democratic advantage in the turnout model, as opposed to the 6, 8, 10, 12 that you'll see in a lot of the media polls, which is part of the reason why those polls show Biden with relatively healthy leads.
Patrick, I'm sorry to intervene here, but the doctors are speaking outside Walter Reed Medical Center right now. Just hang on. We'll go right to them and we'll be back with you, Patrick Basham. Let's hear what the doctors have to say.
Return home, where he'll be surrounded by world-class medical care 24/7. I'd like to bring Dr. Dooley up to review some more specifics.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Just a brief update this morning. As Dr. Connolly mentioned, the president continues to do very well. His vital signs this morning were notable for a temperature of 98.1. His blood pressure was 134/78. A respiratory rate of 17 respirations per minute. His heart rate was 68 beats per minute. And his last oxyhemoglobin saturation was 97% on room air. He currently does not endorse any respiratory complaints. And aside from our evaluation with the multidisciplinary team this morning, has maintained a full schedule, ambulating and working on the White House medical unit. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Garibaldi to again discuss therapeutics. Thanks.
Hi, good afternoon. And again, I just wanted to echo the sentiment of what an honor it is to be part of this wonderful team here at Walter Reed. Yesterday evening, the president received his 3rd dose of remdesivir. He tolerated that infusion without difficulty, and his kidney and liver function continued to be normal. Our plan is to give the 4th dose of remdesivir this evening before he goes back to the White House, and we've made arrangements to deliver the 5th and final dose of his treatment course at the White House tomorrow evening. He continues on dexamethasone, and again, the plan for today is to continue to be up and out of bed, eat and drink, and work as he is able. And I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Jason Blaylock, who's an infectious disease specialist and the chief of medicine here at Walter Reed, to give some updates on infection control. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I just want to say what an honor it's been to be part of this medical team behind me and to care for the president. Since the president's arrival at Walter Reed, he's received medical management that remains in line with national clinical societal guidelines for treatment of COVID-19 infection. In addition, both myself and Dr. Wes Campbell have worked very closely with various laboratories in the area, state-of-the-art facilities to include USAMRIID and RARE on obtaining advanced diagnostic testing to really inform the White House medical team of both the status of the president as well as his ability to transmit virus to others. Also, we have worked very closely with the Walter Reed team to ensure that we are looking very closely at infection control prevention strategies and the right posture so that the President can safely return to his residence. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Conley, who will answer any final questions.
Thanks, Jason. I mentioned it Saturday, but I'd like to reiterate myself just how grateful the President and I are to the men and women of Walter Reed, our colleagues at Johns Hopkins, as well as the many federal, private institutions that we've received support from. And so long as everything continues on the track that we're experiencing right now, this time, as the President already tweeted out, is to get him home later today. With that, I'll take a couple questions.
Discharged back to the White House when he was given steroids. You've said that he's still on those steroids. Those are medicines, as you know, that are usually given to COVID patients who are on ventilators or with low oxygen. So did you over-treat him? And if he's still on that medication, how is it safe for him to return to the White House?
So we send patients home with medications all the time. In fact, yesterday afternoon,
Well, I thought we'd hear that first question to see if they were going to ask anything of importance, but of course the media clowning itself as usual. How could you possibly administer the 5th dose of remdesivir from the White House? Well, it's the White House. That's how you have a pretty good medical team in there. But it's great to hear from the doctors there outside Walter Reed that the President is in good condition. No respiratory complaints. Just a recap on that. Had the 3rd dose, 4th dose this evening of remdesivir. Continues to work, normal kidney and liver function, still on dexamethasone as well there. So the President appears to be making great progress fighting the CCP virus. We're going to take a quick break now and return to our previous guest, Patrick Basham, to talk about, well, something that perked up the President over the weekend, which was the Democracy Institute's poll, which showed that when you methodologically accurately do these things, you get real results. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. All right, we had that breaking news just before the break about the President's condition. Looks good. So we're going to get the show back on the road here on this Monday afternoon. Patrick Basham is our guest, the founder of the Democracy Institute. Patrick, you were walking us through, before we were rudely interrupted by good news that actually the markets are responding very well to, as the president's doctors announced that he will be returning to the White House this evening. But you were talking to us about polling, and whether or not you like it, I don't know, what your personal politics are, but you probably cheered the president up some this weekend while he was getting better there at Walter Reed. That's because the Democracy Institute, which is the organisation which got Brexit correct and which got 2016 in the US correct, has a new poll out. And I can't stress this enough to people, because I talk about this all the time, Patrick. You mentioned before we went to the break that you actually look further into, whether or not the voters are likely voters, if they are likely to go out and vote, and that forms part of the methodology. What else is it about your polls that makes them so accurate?
Well, here we're talking now especially about the art part of it. What we were able to do in 2016, in the spring and summer in the UK on the Brexit vote, was to tease out the shy Brexit voter, the one who wouldn't tell most pollsters what they were going to do, but were actually always planning to vote for Brexit. When we achieved that result, getting the final result just by 1 point off in terms of the Brexit victory, we then tried to adapt that, and we did successfully, to 2016 here in the US on the shy Trump voter. So transport us 4 years forward, and we're doing the same here, tweaking that art. But what we're finding, and this is really, really important, is not only does the shy Trump voter still exist in 2020, he and she, there are far more of them. Right? So, and in different places than before, and in different demographic groups. And I think continuing their problems in 2016, many of the media pollsters especially are either ignoring or just simply not looking for or not finding those shy Trump voters, which is, I think, another reason why our results to date are different to theirs, and why we suggest a much more competitive race, and a race that is, to this point, to President Trump's advantage.
So when you go through and you look down into the numbers on your poll, for instance, you see some very different numbers in the battleground states that were being told by the establishment media, but you're also seeing much different numbers amongst black and Hispanic voters. Is that what you're talking about in terms of shy voters, not from where the media necessarily looks?
In part. There are going to be some shy Trump voters amongst middle-class white women, especially in the suburbs. Look for that on election night. But yes, Hispanics and African Americans are breaking for Donald Trump in a way that most people did not see coming, and still many are refusing to accept. So, for example, we have an approval rate in our poll of African Americans for Donald Trump's performance at 40%, and 19%, almost 1 in 5 African American voters, are saying they're going to vote for Donald Trump. If he gets anything close to that number, mid-high teens, it's very, very hard for Joe Biden to win the election. Similarly, Hispanics are going to vote, we think, for Donald Trump in the 30s at least. Wow. And if he gets that kind of percentage, then again, it's hard to see a Florida or an Arizona, for example, going to Joe Biden.
So, Patrick, look, you're a much more polite person than I am. I have my theories about why these pollsters do what they do and why they come at it from where they come at it. It doesn't seem like they learn any lessons, but maybe they don't want to learn any lessons here. Is polling now used to measure public opinion, or is it there to try and force public opinion in a particular direction? Because that's what it increasingly looks like. And if that's the case, I want to understand why we're not counting these polls as sort of benefit in kind, donation in kind, contributions in kind to whomever uses them to prompt the voter rather than inform them.
Those two uses of polling that you've outlined, they're not mutually exclusive. And by that I mean that both are running simultaneously as we speak. So we have public polls that are put out, I think, it's fair to say these days to push and to maintain a narrative, in this case that Joe Biden is in great shape and that most Republican voters should really accept that Trump's going to be defeated. The other element that's running alongside that, parallel, are the internal polls that, for example, the Biden campaign has, the Trump campaign has. Those polls are usually very accurate. They have to be accurate. So the Biden campaign knows that he's not up by double digits. That's why they're pulling their money out of Texas. They're not spending all their time in Alabama. They're trying to swing that. They're spending their time in those Rust Belt states where they know they are in a very, very competitive race.
Patrick, I know we're going to let you go, but just tell our audience where they can get more from the Democracy Institute. We'd love to have you back regularly, honestly.
Oh, my pleasure. democracyinstitute.org. All of our polling and other information is there, and we welcome any interest from your viewers.
Fantastic. Patrick Basham, thank you so much for joining us here on the National Pulse today. Really informative stuff that very much paints a totally different picture of an election than we're being told by some of these pollsters. By the NBC, Wall Street Journal polled over the course of the weekend, by the Washington Post, an ABC poll from over the weekend, and they keep happening over and over again, which is why we're so grateful to have somebody like Patrick give us his time today. He's a very busy man, giving us his time today to walk us through some of the details there. Now, if you haven't seen this stuff yet, you have to check it out. You have to share it with people. We have the article up on thenationalpulse.com. It's called Poll That Doesn't Weight in Favor of Democrats Shows Trump Leading Nationally. And what do I mean by that? So the numbers from the poll from this weekend, the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, they sampled, of all the people they sampled, 35% of them were Democrats. 38% of them were independents, and just 27% of them were Republicans. So a +8 Democrat weighting on that poll. The last time they did the same poll, the weighting was a +3 Democrats. So they've shifted 5 points on that. And look, in the latest poll, Joe Biden's up 6 points. So that's within the margin of error of how much they've increased by. It's very clear to see if you get down into the details, what we call the cross tabs on these polls, that so much of it is a stitch up. That's a good thing for you guys, that you have us to watch the watchers. We're going to go to a quick break now. When we come back, Phil Klein, another guardian of the Guardians from the Amistad Project, will join us to talk about the lawsuits all across the country, and Mark Zuckerberg. We'll be back. afternoon, the president will be leaving the Walter Reed Medical Center and continuing on getting better from the White House. Will be administered his fourth dose, I think, of remdesivir later on today at Walter Reed, and then the last at the White House tomorrow. The market's responding very favorably to that news, so let nobody tell you that Joe Biden is one of the favorites as far as the markets are concerned. And of course, in a time when jobs and the economy are the number one issue up and down the country, the president getting better is America getting better, quite frankly. And we're grateful for all the details that have been coming out from the president's doctors and his medical team, as Kayleigh McEnany tests positive this morning as well. We want to offer our thoughts and prayers to everybody who is suffering out there, not just the high-profile people, but especially the people in leadership positions all around the world. It is imperative that no matter who it was, whether it was Barack Obama or Joe Biden or whoever, that we actually show a sense of unity and decency. I don't wish this disease on anyone, quite frankly, and I'm very grateful for the fact that the president's going to be back in the Oval Office over the next coming days. Now, somebody who's action is Phil Klein. Phil is the director of the Amistad Project of the Thomas More Society. And we're very grateful to have Phil on the show with us now to walk us through some of the more detailed elements of how the fix is being leveled against the president. Now, Phil, we just had Patrick Basham on from the Democracy Institute, and Patrick walked us through a lot of the polling. His organization got 2016 correct. He got the Brexit vote correct. We've got new information out of them from this weekend showing that the numbers are nothing like what the establishment media and their pollsters are claiming the numbers are like. And other numbers that you won't see in the establishment media are these numbers that you guys have released this morning. And as soon as I saw these, I thought, my goodness, we have to have Phil on the show. So I'm so grateful for you coming on here today. Phil, $250 million in private money to direct government election management. What is all this about?
Well, this is Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan, who gave $250 million to the Center for Tech and Civic Life, and they in turn are buying off local governments to run the elections the way they want to. Now, there's real danger on two sides here. Blue state governors have shut down in-person polling, and that's the way that Republicans prefer to vote. So out in the rural areas or suburban areas where Republicans generally carry at election night, it's become more difficult to vote than in a generation. But in the urban areas and Democrat strongholds, thanks to Zuckerberg money, government is making it very, very easy to vote. And not only that, they are actually breaking existing state law when they do it. In Pennsylvania, for example, $10 million of Zuckerberg money through a charity to Philadelphia. Philadelphia is now hiring activists, deputizing them, and having them drive around the city to pick up ballots. Ballot harvesting is illegal in Philadelphia, but they claim they have to do it because of COVID. In Minneapolis, you have the same type of thing happening with Zuckerberg money. Of the top grants, 51 million, only 0.5% has gone to a county that Donald Trump carried over Hillary Clinton in 2016. The rest going to Democratic strongholds.
Hang on, Phil, you're breaking news right there. I want to get that straight. Out of the 51 million that is listed on this document that you've pointed out here, of where the CTCL, the Center for Technology and Civic Life grants go, you're telling us that less than $300,000 went to a county that President Trump carried?
Yes.
That's extraordinary.
And the problem with that is that's like stuffing money in the umpire's pocket before they call the first strike. That's what the role of government is, to be objective, not to play favorites, and not to carry out the private interests of a billionaire. And that's why this is a problem.
Phil, this is extraordinary information, and credit to your organization, to the Amistad Project and the Thomas More Society, and to yourself and your team for digging all of this up. In the next segment, I want to get into what the actions you're taking to bring this information out and to bring bring justice to a lot of what's going on here. But let me just ask you this question. Do we know who the people are that the states are hiring to go around and harvest these ballots? Is there a public register somewhere of these people that they can be checked out? And is there any transparency?
Well, in Philadelphia, for example, there's not as much transparency as if it was pure government. But in Philadelphia, they hired the Committee of 70. The Committee of 70 is run by a gentleman who opposes Trump, whose father endorsed Biden for president. He's a Republican, but he opposes Trump. And in fact, they supported the impeachment of the president. So there is a real clear path here that it's Democrat operatives, it's Democrat money, and in fact, the American people are subsidizing it because they're flowing it through a charity, and they're buying local government officials where they believe they can turn out to vote for Hillary Clinton. For Hillary Clinton votes for Biden. And that's a problem. Government targeting a demographic to turn out the vote is the opposite side of the same coin as government targeting a demographic to suppress the vote. And we saw this before at the turn of the 20th century when the Democratic Party in the Deep South made it real hard for blacks to vote and real easy for whites to vote. Well, now they're doing it by party, and they're using government to do it, and that's wrong.
Phil, it's absolutely incredible work that you guys are doing. Just hang on with us. I want to get you on after the break to explain to us what steps you're taking to make sure that this is, exposed is one thing, but stopped in its tracks. This is some extraordinary details here, and we'll make sure that we have all of this up on the National Pulse website. Isn't that right, Natalie? After the show today. In the meantime, I want you to head over to thenationalpulse.com/support, or you can go to fundrealnews.com. Support us bringing you this kind of information. I want you to support groups like the Amistad Project and Phil Klein. Support groups like the Democracy Institute and Patrick Basham. It is very clear that there's a whole new cadre of organizations, institutions, and individuals rising up to the fore here as the old establishment GOP has failed to recognize a lot of what's been going on here. So credit to all of these people. We'll be back with more details from former Kansas Attorney General and Director of the Amistad Project, Phil Klein, here on the National Pulse right after this break. Well, back in 2015, in the UK election, a candidate for the UK Independence Party was giving out sausage rolls to people as a courtesy, I suppose. But there are quite strict laws against doing things like that. It's called treating. And it's seen as an inducement to voters. Treating has actually been a criminal offence in the United Kingdom since, I think, about 1840. Phil Klein joins us on the line now, former Kansas Attorney General and the director of the Amistad Project, talking to us about this money that's being funneled in by a Mark Zuckerberg organization, the Center for Technology and Civic Life, $250 million. And Phil, before we had you on, I actually read out in the first block of the show the counties and areas and cities and towns that you guys have listed here as the top list of where a lot of these monies are going. Just want to quickly recap. Out of the $51,606,215 of the top CTCL grants, just remind our audience, how much is going into counties that Donald Trump carried in 2016?
0.5%, $289,000.
It's extraordinary stuff. Now, talk to us about this treating that we talked about in the break that appears to be going on as well in some of these areas.
Well, yeah, and the U.S. has similar laws in that you're not supposed to give anything of value to any government official or any voter in order to induce them to vote. Now, first of all, I'll mention that the Zuckerberg charity is giving $10 to $15 million to city officials to spend in trying to induce people to vote. So that's a problem on its face. But they're also now in Democrat strongholds providing free food, providing entertainment, doing additional things to induce people to show up to vote, while at the same time these blue state governors have shut down the ability to vote in person in traditional Republican strongholds. So you have voter suppression and you have voter enhancement, all done by the government, and that's not proper. We've seen that before. It shouldn't happen. So we've initiated 8 lawsuits so far in various states to stop this. If Mr. Zuckerberg wants to help government, he can give the money to the state legislature so they can spread it out fairly in the state. Let me give you one example. State law provided Green Bay, the city of Green Bay, just over $7 a voter to manage the elections. Rural areas got about $4 a voter. Now that Mr. Zuckerberg has stepped in, Green Bay has over $47 per voter to turn them out, while the rural areas and suburban areas that are Republican strongholds still have the 4 state dollars. That's the difference they're making right now. And that disparate impact is not supported in law.
You know, Mother Jones, the website, the very left-wing website, had a list this morning of 29 things the Trump administration is doing to make the vote unfair. But actually, it sounds to me like there's a lot of underreported, if reported at all, details that you guys are bringing out about how the left and their politicians are making the vote unfair up and down the country. But talk to us a little bit about these lawsuits. What do you hope to achieve here? I mean, is there time?
Well, there is, hopefully. Now, generally, elections move more swiftly than courts. And that's the reality, and that's what they're betting on because they're doing things that clearly should not be allowed. As I mentioned, in Philadelphia, where the law is clear that absentee ballots have to be postmarked by a certain date and received by a certain date, or you drop it off at the polling places, they have created mobile ballot collection systems with Zuckerberg money. They're putting drop boxes out on street corners. They have people driving around and harvesting ballots, which is illegal under Pennsylvania law. So, yes, the left is doing much that undermines election integrity that's not being covered by the mainstream media, and you don't have to scratch the surface very hard to see it. They are also suspending state laws that protect integrity of the absentee ballot. And Raheem, we're not against absentee ballots, but the ballot is cast away from election workers where they can't ensure that the voter is not intimidated, coerced, or misled, or that it's even the voter completing the ballot. So states have some protections. They require the voter to sign the outside of the ballot envelope, and they're supposed to compare that signature with the signature on file. States are suspending that in blue states. They're ignoring it. They're doing online where there is no signature. There are requirements.
Yeah, I mean, how does that work? Phil, how on earth can that possibly work? How can you, I mean, let me give you an example. I am not a US citizen. I have no right to vote here. And I received 3 mail-in ballots to my home address last week. You're telling me I could just, I don't even have to sign those things in some of these places around the country?
That's right. They have suspended the signature requirements or created procedures that undermine them. And some states, Raheem, have a witness requirement, where when you fill this out, you would go and get a family member or somebody to also sign, to say it was you. They've suspended that, saying COVID makes it too great a risk to get a witness. That's the type of thing that we're seeing across the nation, where there are blue state governors and local blue jurisdictions with Democrat election officials undermining the rule of law.
Phil, we're so grateful that you're doing this work and that you took the time to come speak to us today. We'll have you back anytime you want, quite frankly. You guys are just doing the best work out there on this, so we're really grateful. Could you just give our audience a heads up where they can go, which website, which Twitter feed to support your work?
Thank you. It's got-freedom.org. got-freedom.org.
All right, we'll make sure that we get that up as well on the live stream and everywhere. Phil Klein, thank you so much for joining us here on the show today.
Thank you, Raheem.
This is an outrage, ladies and gentlemen, what they're doing all across the country, and I've lived it before. I mean, I made a joke about sausage rolls, but genuinely there have been just extraordinary examples of this taking place all across the Western world, and guess what? It's now here in the United States. You look at the work that the Amistad Project, what Phil Klein's doing at got-freedom.org. It's a wonder to me that this isn't making the front pages. Oh wait, the front pages are too busy running their fake polls, as we told you about earlier on in the show today. So I brought you some good news on the polling at the top of the show. Bad news about what's taking place behind the scenes. I've got more on that after this break. Well, it's your support that keeps the scoops coming. Make sure you're heading over to fundrealnews.com. Something just weird popped up on my laptop. Didn't want that. All right, Natalie Winters is joining us in this segment today. Natalie, we got a lot to talk about, so let's roll through it really quickly. Talking about ballot security and integrity, tell us about the latest from the Trump administration.
Well, Phil Klein and the Amistad Project are certainly doing a lot of legwork to make sure that this election is free and fair and that we don't see any nefarious politicking going on in terms of voting and mail-in ballots and universal absentee ballots. But another organization who's also doing that is the Trump administration, specifically the Trump campaign and their legal team. They invalidated over 100,000 ballots coming out of Iowa. Specifically, they targeted these certain mail-in ballots that they were sending to individuals' homes that were basically filled out. All people had to do was sign it, and they would automatically mail it back. People's names, address, and specifically their voter ID number, which is a really important part of most of these ballot applications that you have to fill out, like the ones that you received at your house a few weeks ago. So the Trump campaign is definitely doing a lot to preserve the integrity of this election in crucial swing states like Iowa.
And no doubt the Democrats crying foul over this, but specifically, I mean, these are ballots that they're effectively saying are these mass unsolicited ballots which don't require signatures, which are being sent en masse to the wrong addresses. And I mean, right now, America has millions upon millions of ballots out there that are either with the wrong people, not with any people at all, won't require any signature, won't require any verification, won't require any witnesses. I mean, it's no doubt the media is wandering around with their chest puffed out going, Biden's going to win, Biden's going to win, it's going to be a landslide, because they know there's this massive fix out there. So the question remains, and we'll keep asking the question here on this show and answering some of them, about how we actually stop a lot of this. And Phil Klein and the Amistad Project are a big part of that. We'll keep the audience abreast of all of the information that we get along those lines. I want to pivot to this. Look, there's so much of this election interference stuff going on out there right now. So last week, correct me if I'm wrong, as Reuters highlights this Russian website, and we talked about it on the end of the show on Friday.
Yes.
But it's called the Newsroom for American and European-Based Citizens, the NAEBC. And they highlight this as the obvious evidence that the Russians are colluding or interfering or whatever the new buzzword is. But we went to this website, we checked them out, and we checked out how much impact and influence they have. Natalie, they don't even get ranked by web ranking organizations. That's how low they are.
Exactly. They don't even drive enough traffic to register. Not even one view. We don't even know, according to website analytics firms like SimilarWeb. NA, not enough data appears about 6 times on about every single category. But it's exactly what you're talking about. Democrats talk a big game on wanting to preserve the integrity of elections, yet not only are they the party that perennially defends against voter ID laws, effectively allowing anyone, any foreign national who just crosses the border, to come and vote in our elections. But now you kind of see in 2020 this mail-in ballot. While we're used to Democrats pandering for votes, now they're essentially pandering for ballots, right? They're just trying to get these ballots turned around, turned in, signed. You don't have to write your name, you don't have to write your voter ID number. They want to make it as quick and easy as possible, and definitely want to see a Democrat and Joe Biden's name on that ballot.
I'm just looking at this website again now, the Newsroom for American and European-Based Citizens. I mean, firstly, it's designed on like blogger.com or something. It's the logo looks like it's made in Microsoft Paint. I don't think they're even using their own copy. They just take copy from other websites and paste it in here. And every single article has 0 comments, and from the looks of it, 0 views. If SimilarWeb and Alexa and these other websites are to be believed, which, this is how web numbers are counted. So we know from Thomas Farnan in his book, The Russia Lie, which you can get at therussialie.com, by the way, we know that there was a huge setup in 2016. And almost all, if not totally all, of the Russian interference allegations have just fallen apart. We saw that with Brexit as well. We ended up finding out that Russia spent, I think it was 73 pence or 99 cents on Facebook advertisements. A very similar number over here. Most of the ads over here landing after the election, not before, and also most of them were in favor of Hillary Clinton to some extent. So we know that that's just trash. Are they trying to resurrect that failed narrative with this website?
I think it's definitely a double standard. You get a 2,000 word Reuters exclusive on a website that drives literally zero or sample size too small.
I'm supposed to be the conspiracy theorist here, right? That's what they say about me. But they're the ones writing about some blogger website that nobody's looking at and saying this is a big play to win the election.
Exactly. That took 3 articles from alleged conservative journalists. And as you said, the aesthetics of the site are horrible. They almost compete with the Transition Integrity Project.
Listen, this thing is incredibly funny to me, but it's sad at the same time that like I say real journalists, but people who at least like wanted to grow up to be real journalists are spending time writing these 2,000 word exclusives for Reuters about websites like this. But that makes me think this isn't just silliness that's going on here. This is a targeted campaign and operation. I think it was the Daily Beast who got really upset about this. Will Sommer and Michael Weiss. I wouldn't be surprised if they were the ones who set this website up so that they could then write about it.
Probably, to appropriate a word that they use. It's effectively mainstream media collusion. And it's so interesting that they use this site, which, as we said, gets no views, to kind of delegitimize the Trump movement, right? Oh, it's all Russian bots. It's individuals couldn't actually want President Trump to be their president. They've been misinformed by the Russians. But then you see groups like the Lincoln Project, who John Weaver is a registered foreign agent on behalf of a Russian-owned nuclear energy company, and yet that group is hailed by the mainstream media.
What happened to John Weaver, by the way? There was a big story that was going to come out about him a couple of weeks ago, and then he suddenly said, I'm going to the hospital, I've got a cardiac event, and nobody ever heard anything since.
And they gave him a free pass.
Yeah, the media gave him a free pass after that, but no updates, no nothing. Very strange. Just very quickly, before we go, you got some Media Matters stories. Our new favourites, Media Matters. Just tease, 20 seconds.
People who don't like men, people who don't like white people, a lot of old nasty tweets coming from the Media Matters group, which is expected. They don't like America, as we know. Justin Horowitz doesn't like the 4th of July.
Oh, it may be expected, but as I say, they get a free pass. Not anymore, thanks to Natalie Winters and the nationalpulse.com. Stick around here on Real America's Voice. And make sure you're tuning in on Wednesday for our vice presidential debate coverage, which I will be a part of, if they let me back, after eating pizza on air last time. We'll see you again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thank you.